Asylum Inc. presents Phobic, an exploration of fear. The buzzing hours. The corridors of the asylum breathe with a susurrus that might be ventilation, might be something far more ancient, stirring in the building's concrete marrow. Down here, 3 floors beneath the mercy of natural light, we house the peculiar cases, those whose terrors have grown teeth, whose nightmares have learned to nest. Evie Sorrenson arrived on a stretcher that October morning, her flesh the color of winter milk, mapped with a constellation of puncture wounds that had long since ceased to weep. The paramedics spoke in hushed tones of the state they'd found her in, naked, soil-caked, curled fetal in the hollow of what the forestry report would later classify as an impossible tree, a species that shouldn't exist in Salt Hollow Preserve, shouldn't exist anywhere on this continent. Shouldn't exist at all. But existence, I've learned in my years ministering to the fractured psyche, is a far more negotiable concept than we care to admit. The first thing one notices about Miss Sorrenson is the way she moves, or rather, the way she doesn't. Each gesture is preceded by a moment of perfect stillness, as if she's listening to something the rest of us cannot hear. Her head tilts at angles that suggest a neck suddenly unfamiliar with its own mechanics. When she speaks, which is seldom, her voice carries the dry rustle of paper wasps constructing their paper kingdoms. "They didn't sting me," she told me during our initial session, her pale fingers worrying at the cuffs of her regulation gown. "They marked me. There's a difference, Doctor. A sting is temporary. A mark is architectural." The wounds themselves defied medical explanation. Circular punctures, each precisely 2 millimeters in diameter, arranged in patterns that seemed to follow some inexplicable geometry. Dr. Carmichael from dermatology suggested needle marks, perhaps some ritualistic self-harm, but the tissue samples revealed something that made him recommend immediate transfer to our facility. The punctures went deep, deeper than they should have given their size, and at the bottom of each tiny wound, microscopic analysis revealed traces of a substance that wasn't quite organic, wasn't quite synthetic. It built structures, hexagonal structures. "The clearing wasn't on my map," Evie whispered during our 3rd session, her eyes fixed on the corner where the fluorescent light hummed its electric lullaby. I had learned by then to keep the room's electrical sounds to a minimum. Anything that approximated the frequency of insect wings would send her into catatonic episodes that could last for hours. "I've hiked Salt Hollow 100 times. I know every trail, every turn. But that morning, the path just opened, like it was built for me to find it." She described the silence first, an absence so complete it seemed to have weight, pressing against her eardrums until she could hear her own blood moving through her vessels. No wind disturbed the canopy above. No creatures scurried through the underbrush. Even her footsteps seemed to die before they could echo, swallowed by an atmosphere that had forgotten how to carry sound. Then came the humming. "Not wings," she insisted, her hands beginning their familiar motion of scratching at her arms, though the wounds there had long since healed. "Wings make a different sound. This was structural. Like the earth itself was vibrating, like something underneath was tuning itself." I have reviewed the police reports, the search and rescue documentation, the forestry surveys. There is no clearing matching her description anywhere in Salt Hollow Preserve. The GPS coordinates she provided lead to a section of dense woodland that shows no signs of disturbance, no evidence that human feet have ever touched its moss-carpeted floor. Yet the soil samples recovered from beneath her fingernails tell a different story. "They rose from the ground," Evie continued, her voice dropping to barely more than a whisper. "Not flying up, but seeping up, like they were made of earth and had just remembered they had wings. And they were orderly. So orderly, Doctor. They moved in patterns, geometric patterns, like they were following blueprints." The attending EMT's report noted the absence of typical venom reaction. No swelling, no inflammation, no anaphylactic response. Just the wounds themselves, neat and purposeful, as if something had been depositing rather than extracting. When I suggested this observation to Evie, her reaction was immediate and violent. She began clawing at her skin with such ferocity that we were forced to sedate her, but not before she managed to reopen several of the old puncture sites. What emerged was not blood. It was a clear, viscous fluid that, under microscopic examination, revealed itself to be structurally similar to the paper pulp used in wasp nest construction. Dr. Reeves, from our biochemistry department, ran 17 different tests before finally admitting defeat. The substance contained cellulose fibers that shouldn't exist in human tissue, arranged in patterns that suggested intentional architecture. "They're building," Evie told me when she finally regained consciousness. "Inside. They're building inside me." Her behavior in the facility has grown increasingly erratic. She refuses to sleep during daylight hours, claiming that warmth activates them. The maintenance staff report finding her pressed against the coolest walls in her room, her ear against the concrete, as if listening for something. When questioned, she simply states that she's monitoring the construction. The photographs appeared during her second week with us. Despite constant surveillance, despite locked doors and searched belongings, her room began to fill with images. Hundreds of them, tacked to every available surface. Close-up photographs of wasp nests, cropped and arranged to form spiraling patterns that seem to shift when viewed peripherally. Security footage shows no one entering her room, no packages delivered, no explanation for how the images materialized. When confronted, Evie's response chilled me more than any scream could have. "I didn't put them there, Doctor. They did. They're showing me the master plan." Her skin has begun to change. Subtly at first, a slight translucency that I attributed to poor nutrition and lack of sunlight. But as the weeks progress, the change has become more pronounced. In certain lights, one can almost see through her epidermis, observe what appears to be a network of fine structures just beneath the surface. Hexagonal structures. Building. Always building. Last night, she asked me a question that has haunted my sleep. "Doctor, what if evolution isn't about survival of the fittest? What if it's about survival of the most cooperative? What if we were never meant to be the architects?" This morning, maintenance reported that the fluorescent light in her room has begun to emit a sound, a low, rhythmic humming that matches no known electrical frequency. When I went to investigate, I found Evie standing directly beneath it, her arms spread wide, her head tilted back, her mouth open as if receiving communion. The light wasn't flickering. It was pulsing, in patterns, geometric patterns. And, as I watched, frozen by a terror I cannot adequately describe, I realized that the humming wasn't coming from the light fixture at all. It was coming from her. Attending notes, Dr. Nina Voss. Patient exhibits progressive deterioration of psychological and physiological baseline parameters. Recommend immediate transfer to sublevel 5 containment, pending review by the Xenobiological Assessment Committee. Note: have begun experiencing auditory phenomena in my own quarters. Request reassignment to different caseload. The humming follows me home. Addendum: request denied. Patient claims to recognize me now. Says I was always meant to be here. Have sealed this file pending... Pending what? The blueprints are becoming clearer. The architecture makes sense now. We are not the builders. We are the foundation. God help us. We are the foundation. If you found yourself stirred, unsettled, or just a bit more wary of shadows, consider offering a like to feed the entity that powers these tales. And should you subscribe, you may yet survive to hear the next whisper from the void.